Hey everyone, you're tuned into InfoQuench with Jeff.
And Amy. Join us as we talk about anything.
And everything.
All the stuff that makes life interesting.
So let's get to it. Hey everybody, and welcome to InfoQuench. I'm your host Jeff.
And I'm Amy.
And this is part 3 of our conversation centered around the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yes. Still having to look at the cover, weren't you, on that third
I don't
part?
want to get it wrong. I do not want to get it wrong. I have to say that, this has been a popular series of podcasts. These three. It's nice.
It had some great feedback on it. I think people are finding it interesting.
Yeah.
I was curious whether or not it would resonate with everyone or with a good group of our listeners, because not everybody's in the same place in their life, and I think we all contemplate life and the meaning of life and purpose.
This is kind of a book, though, you could read at any point in your life and get something from it, even though I have not read it yet. That's unbelievable. It's a 100-page book. But, man, life has been crazy lately. It's busy. It's been very busy.
Yes, we just actually took an amazing trip to St. Andrews in beautiful New Brunswick, which is the province we live in. We broadcast out of St. John, New Brunswick. And St. Andrews is only about an hour from us. And we had a lot of talk around ghosts.
That's right,
during our trip.
In the Algonquin.
We stayed at the Algonquin Resort,
yeah.
which is known to be one of the most haunted places, not only in New Brunswick, but in all of Canada.
Yeah, I wanted to say at the same time.
Like a ghost just inhabited us there.
We should tell her story about going to that room. Because there's a story, Amy looked it up on Wikipedia, I think, and there's a story about a woman who her husband was at sea, is that correct, or something like that?
Yes, so when you go to the Algonquin, you can actually go out and get a ghost tour, which we didn't pay to do because we're cheap that way. No, no. The reason we didn't do it actually was because we had our son Huxley with us, and he's only 7, and we thought it might be a little freaky for him to hear ghost stories. But if you are staying there, you can get a tour where they walk you through the history of the place, and I mean it does have a lot of history, and because of that, I think any building of that age is going to have some tragedy in its past.
I mean it can't be all cheery the whole time.
So some of the,
some bad things are going to happen.
The entire structure actually burnt down early on in its history, and then was rebuilt. And before it burnt down, one of the tragic stories that happened was there was a young boy who chased his red ball out of a 3-story window and fell to his death. So that's one of the ghosts that's said to haunt
with the ball?
Resort.
Does he?
Yeah, actually, if you Google it online, you can find some images that are said to show the little boy holding his ball.
No way.
Yeah.
I guess I never really looked at that either, did I?
And I don't think neither you nor I we're not really believers in ghosts, but I find history of anything interesting. And we were explaining to our son, that sometimes people just like the idea of being afraid.
Being scared, that's why there's scary movies and stuff, right?
Right. I mean, that's what Halloween's all about. And I'm sure it's about more things than that, but...
Yeah,
maybe we'll do an episode on the history of Halloween. But
that's what I was wondering. Like maybe we should do some more podcasts based on books that we've read or movies that we've watched,
or books that you haven't read,
and stretch them right out. Yeah, or movies I haven't watched. That's right. Yeah, could do that. I do plan to read it.
Just to kind of circle back to the Algonquin, because you touched on the second
ghost story,
main tragedy. I guess it's really discussed about that it reminds me of Romeo and Juliet, because it's a bride who stayed there the eve of her wedding, and I guess on the wedding day, I may not be getting this 100% correct, but the gist of it is that her groom didn't show up because he was caught out at sea, so he had a delay in arriving, but she thought that she was being just left at the altar, and apparently she died in her suite, and it was thought that she committed suicide. So that's in room 473 at the Algonquin.
Yeah.
And so we
went looking.
We went and took a little. We had our lunch on the patio, and a beautiful sunny day, and then we took a little stroll through the hotel, like a bunch of creepsters, and walked by room 473.
But the thing is that 473, where it should originally be, is now just like a room for the.
Well, it was strange.
maids and
The
stuff.
first hallway we went down, it
Cleaners.
looked like it would where we thought it would be, because it fell before 475 on that
Yeah.
side, was a housekeeping suite. But then we
Housekeeping
went down
suite.
another wing, and then we saw a room marked as 473. So we wondered whether the original one was actually redesignated, and then they just switched the numbers around. But one of my coworkers actually stayed in room 473.
Really?
Yes,
And
and I
so
will
did
keep
she
her
have-
identity.
Did
a
she have an
secret.
experience?
She didn't. She said it was fine. She
Yeah.
said her husband thought it was a little.
A little creepy.
He got creepy vibes.
Yeah.
Creepy vibes. So
That's really interesting.
I don't think any of us did. I think.
Did she specifically want to stay in that room, like because
I think
of the
so.
story?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think no. I think they did. I think
That's interesting.
they did the tour, and I think they were just curious, and they wanted to stay in that room. But I don't think any of us really get the vibes, but we were just more. It's that morbid curiosity of just
Yeah.
going by the room
Just
to
wondering.
see where it was. It looked no different than any other room. But another thing that we did was to go to Minister's Island,
Yeah, Minister's Island was amazing.
which is really cool. I mean, the tide comes down, so there's only a short time where you can drive to the island. There isn't a bridge or a ferry or anything, but once the tide recedes, you've got that 4 or 5 hour window where you can drive across a sandbar and go and visit the island, and then learn the entire history and what a history it has. So if you're local to St. John, New Brunswick, or if you're ever visiting our beautiful area, I highly encourage you to visit Minister's Island or St. Andrews in general, and the Algonquin is an amazing facility.
The main character of Minister's Island was
William Van Horn,
William Van Horn,
who was the
that's it.
president of the
Yeah.
Canadian Pacific Railway.
Yeah, and what a Renaissance man he was.
Oh, he only slept 3 to 4 hours a night.
I know. He was a painter. He was a sculptor. He was a gardener. He was like.
He was
honestly,
the mayor of his hometown in Illinois.
He was a farmer. He was. It's just insane. It goes on and on.
There's one
Yeah,
of the
that's a funny thing. He's not even Canadian, but like he's celebrated as if he was one over on Minister's Island.
Well, yeah, it's one of the stories is that he had this incredible barn, and he had, it was basically a fully sustained, self-sustaining island with
Everything.
dairy farmers,
Cheese,
his
milk.
vegetables, everything he needed was there.
Yeah.
But one day he'd gone down to the barn, and the workers inside the barn were waving at him as he approached, and then he had them immediately rebuild the barn, adjust it to raise the windows so that they couldn't wave at him through the windows.
I find that a really strange thing to put in a tour about somebody they're supposed to be celebrating.
I know.
You know what I mean?
It was an interesting little introduction.
Makes him
wasn't
just
it?
sound like a complete jerk. Like, how dare you wave at me?
We're gonna just raise all
Move
those
those
windows.
windows. Move those windows right now.
No views for you.
I know.
But I guess they said he also treated his staff quite well. But
Yeah, they did say that. That's right.
He just didn't want. Maybe he had something against waving.
Yeah.
Enough about that. And
Yeah.
back to
Wow. Oh yeah, there's some book we're supposed to be talking about here.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk, as we sort of wrap up the discussion around this, there's a few more quotes, passages from the book that I wanted to read that, for whatever reason, they're the ones that make you go, not
Yeah.
aha, but just really make you contemplate things in general.
Okay.
So during I mentioned the logotherapy section of the book. So the book was divided into two sections. One was
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl's experience in the concentration camp, and then the latter half was around logotherapy, which is logo being the Greek word for meaning. So he introduced a form of therapy that would help patients through the use of finding meaning in their lives.
Yeah.
And he would have a lot of discussions with groups of patients. But one of the questions he posed to them was, if they felt an ape, which was being used, and I will paraphrase a little bit here.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But basically being used to develop a treatment for polio.
Mm-hmm.
And so that ape has to be stuck with a needle day after day in order to develop this serum. So he asked the group, do you think that ape could ever grasp the meaning behind its suffering? Could that ape ever understand that being pricked by the needle that was causing him pain, or her pain, if they could ever understand the meaning behind it, the greater meaning of treating polio as the reasoning for their suffering?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think? So. What do you think the group said?
I don't think. That.
Yeah, absolutely. Unanimously, the group replied that, of course, it would not. With its limited intelligence, it could not enter into the world of man. Yeah. In other words, the only world in which the meaning of its suffering would be understandable. So, saying of all, when you look at the animal kingdom, really, man is the only, being capable of understanding what the meaning could be.
Because of the higher intelligence.
Exactly, behind suffering.
The ape would just think that that mankind was just being a jerk. Really? Well, you just keep hitting me with this.
That would be
why are you doing
basic
this
instinct, right?
I don't even know if they
Not
would
the Sharon
think
Stone
that.
basic instinct.
They would just think,
That's
it's happening again.
That's for an X-rated version of our podcast.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. They wouldn't understand what it is. So he pushed them further beyond that, and he said, hey, and what about man? So if you believe that of the ape, are you sure that the human world is a terminal point in the evolution of the cosmos? Is it not conceivable that there is still another dimension, a world beyond man's world, a world in which the question of an ultimate meaning of human suffering would find an answer?
Oh, yeah.
So I found that
is a thing.
Very fascinating, right? Because he gets behind the idea that we can, through contemplation, we can start to see meaning behind our suffering, and that can, in a way, alleviate suffering once it begins to find meaning. If we have purpose and meaning in our life, it helps alleviate suffering. And we often talk about suffering, whether we're looking, I've done a lot of reading around Buddhism, either as a philosophy or as a religion, but or just the overall, the idea of the end of suffering and how that's what mankind, humans strive for, is that end of suffering.
Yeah.
And we do strive for finding some meaning in it. But what I took from that passage was that is, the idea that we're not at the end of our evolution. And I think oftentimes...
We're definitely not. I don't think. There's many more things in store for mankind in the future, I do believe. Things that we won't be around to experience, but that doesn't mean that we can't sort of, look into the future and say that it could happen. You know what I mean? Well,
I think this just made me contemplate how far we've come from the ape.
Yeah.
And just the mindset of it, and they're thinking, how could an ape ever contemplate that? Yet we can. And there's also a certain arrogance, I think, that we have, that we are the end point, that we've already attained the ultimate in terms of, higher level thinking.
Yeah.
But what Frankl really proposes is that if we've evolved that far, then who are we to say that we're at the end of this evolution? And who's to say what goes beyond that? What will be?
Yeah, what it will be, who knows? But you're right. Like, I think we will become a little bit more developed as as mammals, and a little bit more intelligent. Maybe we'll regress. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Well, I think I'm trying to think of a term. If you thought, you have apes and then you have humans, and then I don't know. So say you have these. Maybe we're like ghosts.
It all goes back to St. Andrews. Honey.
We're just entities in the future, and Frankl has the same discussion with a group of entities, 2,000 years from now, or 5,000 years from now, or I don't know, however long it may take to get to that next
Maybe
point.
The next stage is we turn into aliens.
And they sit around and they say, do you think that humans could ever grasp the
thing is, where does that end? Where does that end? Where do you stop saying, okay, this is the end? The
sun's going to burn out, so there's that.
There's that, yeah. So if the sun burns out and there's no atmosphere to breathe, we're all done. We're all cooked.
But if we're all some sort of vaporous, You say potato, I say potato, spirits or something of that nature, if that's our next step in our evolution.
Then we would be ghosts at St. Andrews, in St. Andrews. You know?
Who knows what that looks like, or if you look at reincarnation, maybe we don't need a sun to sustain our existence.
Yeah. I'm glad that other people think about it and try to figure it out, because it's really too much for my brain. I can't figure out what's going to happen with the evolutionary, trajectory of mankind for the future.
You must put evil into evolution.
Evil.
Evolutionary.
Yeah. Evolutionary.
Well, are you the type of person that looks into the sky and gazes at the stars and is in wonder, or does it cause almost fear? Like, I know some people, it's almost uncomfortable because of the magnitude of it and the endlessness of it, and not having that, that
well, I'm the kind of guy
beginning
that
and ending.
stares up at the stars and plays connect the dots.
Looking for that Big Dipper.
Yeah, I'm looking for that Big Dipper. I'm looking for all those things. That's the only one I actually really know. So that's how ignorant I am. At least I can say it. I can admire the stars just like everybody else, but I don't need to really understand them.
But do you contemplate, what is out there, and the extent of our universe, and
to a degree,
and what's beyond that?
To a degree, but I think more my perspective, my philosophy is just living in the now, and not really contemplating those kinds of things too much. I have enough on my plate on this earth.
Well, I mean, we had people, if people didn't look up to the sky and contemplate, we would never know, that the earth was round.
Well,
sorry, flat earthers.
I know. Well, there are
spoiler alert,
entire civilizations that lived by the charts of the stars,
Well, absolutely. Or, just realizing eventually that we actually, it's not everything rotating around the earth, but that we are part of a solar system. All of that is through, the ages, people staring to the sky and contemplating that. And
people have been paying attention to what's happening in the sky since they've been around the sky. Like there's Halley's Comet has been charted. I forget how often it shows up, but every time it does, it's like going back in history. It's like in illustrations and stuff. Like they know it's coming somehow. It's amazing.
Well, and I think there are some that are better at paying attention to the sky than others. I think that they're often. I find it's usually when we're on vacation that I remember to look up.
Oh yeah, I know, because we don't.
Which is sad to me sometimes.
We live in an urban atmosphere which drowns out the stars. Really.
Well, that's right. I mean,
Light
you have ambient
pollution.
light, so it's hard to see the stars. But even looking up at this, the daylight sky and looking at the clouds, and I think having children, like having our son reminds us to look at the clouds and what do you see in the clouds.
Yeah.
And when we're out away from the the urban atmosphere and we can see the stars, it's taking the time to look up at that, because it really does put things in perspective. There's actually an entire type of therapy around stargazing.
Okay.
Where when people do become too caught up in their day-to-day lives and the minutia of what's happening directly in front of them, that if they take the time and they spend time contemplating the night sky and just the sheer magnitude of the universe, that can be a very relaxing thing for them. But for others, it can cause anxiety because of the magnitude and the unknown.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think that it can cause somebody anxiety when they have that feeling of insignificance. Like you've heard this, we're all dust in the wind, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we are all the little specks of dust and are so insignificant in the grand scheme of the whole planet and the whole universe and stuff. It's like we're really nothing. We're just like finite being. I'm not trying to be morose or depressing here, but we are all finite beings that will just like pass on, you know what I mean, and be nothing. We're like a spark in the earth or in the world, If you take it from a scientific perspective, I've always sought comfort in the idea that energy is neither created nor destroyed.
Yeah. And
That's a good
if you
way to
think,
put it. That's a Buddhist mentality, isn't it?
well,
maybe?
well, I mean that's a scientific
Okay.
principle, but it's the idea that, and I don't know all the details of,
Yeah.
there may be some religions that sort of pull that into it as well,
Right,
but
yeah.
just the idea that the human life, or the energy of human life, goes on in some form, even with the death of the body, whether you believe in
It's hard to-
reincarnation or you believe in some other form,
Yeah.
but that energy is still there, and that it is,
It's hard to equate what exactly happens because, like I've said this before, but no one has reported back. No one has come back and said, yeah, this is what it's like. This is what happens. This is because, really, the only way of knowing is passing on. You know what I mean?
well, yes.
And so it's hard to really put your finger down on what happens. So I find that a lot of it is just speculation. A lot of it is just like, this could happen, or this is what happens in this religion. This is what happened in this religion. Like, everybody has a kind of a different story, so it's hard to kind of put it all together to have like a concrete conception of what happens.
But isn't it about, I guess, almost trying to find your own personal story, the one that makes sense for you,
Yeah.
that can give you comfort? And I think that's what led me to this book. And I started out in part one saying that our son asking a lot of questions around, death and what happens, after, and the concepts of heaven and hell, which are depicted, a lot of times in cartoons that he's watching. Or,
I know. He's learning a lot from watching,
I
YouTube
mean, religion,
videos and stuff.
various religions and concepts of religion permeate our everyday life in all aspects. So it's lead children to ask those types of questions. And I think that,
Whoops.
ooh, you've got
That was
mail.
me.
You've got mail. So I think having that, that own personal story in your own mind, and hopefully it's a positive one of what happens at the point of death, is, something that you can create that causes comfort, something that you can believe.
Absolutely.
That, whether you see, whether
I
that
understand
comes
that.
from religion and in terms of faith in,
However you get your solitude is warranted.
right.
Which whatever it is,
So
I
that,
guess I'm just a skeptic more than anything else. That's all. About it all. Like, I don't know what to believe, so I don't hardly believe anything.
but you don't fear death.
Not really.
No,
Because it's
so-
inevitable. That's why. Because we all die. You know what I mean? Like, we all pass on, so why be afraid of it? That's always been my philosophy for some reason. I didn't even get that from anywhere. It's just always the way I've felt since the day I was old enough to understand.
Maybe you're the next step in evolution. Maybe I need to evolve to a Jeff.
Maybe.
Maybe
I don't
it's
know.
Ape, Amy, Jeff.
Yeah. Maybe that was what that sound was earlier. Bling! That was me going to the next evolutionary stage.
Level up.
Level up. Bling!
I think that just having that conversation shows you how this book can be, how it was powerful for me, because just reading that one passage around the ape.
That book has been pivotal for you in your consciousness.
And just the idea of thinking of that, of not thinking of humans as being at the end of evolution.
Yeah.
That all came from reading that one paragraph in the book. So I do want to talk about one other one, as we're sort of wrapping up the discussion, because I had talked about the idea that a lot of times we fear growing old.
Yeah.
And
Which goes back to that conversation we had a while back about that little girl who her father took a picture of her and it made you feel bad, and it made me seem like
yes, just to
made me feel
recap,
like
he took like a short video of her at almost like every year of her life, and
or
then
a photograph more than that.
Or
Yeah.
photograph, okay, and put it together so you
Yeah.
could see her morph over 30 or 40 years
Yeah.
of her life. And initially I felt that to be depressing, just because I thought moments are fleeting and then lost forever. But then I really enjoyed this passage in the book where Viktor Frankl talks a little bit about that. So he talks about As soon as we have used an opportunity and have actualized a potential meaning in our life, we have done so once and for all. We have rescued it into the past. I found that really interesting because you can usually rescue from something. But he says we have rescued it into the past wherein it has been safely delivered and deposited. So in the past, nothing is irretrievably lost, but rather, on the contrary, everything is irrevocably stored and treasured. To be sure, people tend to see only the stubble fields of transitoriness, but overlook and forget the full granaries of the past into which they have brought the harvest of their lives, the deeds done, the loves loved, and last but not least, the sufferings they have gone through with courage and dignity. So he goes on to say that from this, one may see that there is no reason to pity old people. Instead, young people should envy them. It is true that the old have no opportunities, no possibilities in the future, but they have more than that. Instead of possibilities in the future, they have realities in the past, the potentialities they have actualized, the meanings they have fulfilled, the values they have realized, and nothing and nobody can ever remove these assets from the past. So I love the idea of the fact that
as we get older,
they're not these fleeting moments that
No.
we've lost, when we're
They
talking
shape
about
us as
our
people.
children growing up and that they're only little for so long and we're going to lose that forever. But they're assets they were gathering. They are little bits of meaning, and that
yeah,
we shouldn't always just be striving for what's at the future. We have to realize that we've already accomplished so much at any given point in our life, and that has been crystallized.
yeah.
It's
Exactly. I've always found that it's like there's so much energy given on like worrying sometimes about time passing, and in so doing, you sort of lose grasp. You lose that grasp of the present, and you're not enjoying it as much because you're so worried about losing it. Do you know what I mean by that?
yes.
Yes, I think that's a really important thing to do, is to live in the now, because it's kind of all we have. I mean, we have our memories. We have like the memories of things that happened in the past, and we can anticipate what's going to happen in the future. But really, all we have is the now, and in order to shape both our past and our future.
Well, and
So-
I've heard it often said that when we live in the past, it can lead to depression. And when we live in the future, it can lead to anxiety.
Yeah,
But if we live in the present, it'll lead to happiness. And so it's exactly as you said,
It's
that
like-
idea of
like
living
for
in
example,
the moment.
we just got back from St. Andrews. Like I have those memories in my head now, like of all the things that we did, and it's just like it's like snapshots of like everything that's happened. But it really meant the most to me when it actually happened. But I still can remember it, and I can still look forward to doing it again. Do you know what I mean? So it's positive in all directions, for if you look at it in that perspective. For me, anyway.
Yes, and I like taking pictures because
Yeah.
pictures make crystallize those memories even further.
Yeah.
People I think often are critical of themselves for whipping out their phone and trying to capture a moment, but why not be able to capture that moment and then relive it later on and have those discussions and go back on
Exactly.
on the power of those moments and memories
Yeah.
as a family.
But not all. It's funny because not all memories can be positive. Like you can look back at a trip you took and something really horrible happened or whatever, but you can still like in the present think back to the future and learn something positive from it.
Did you say think back to the future?
Yeah, think back to the future. I did say that.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Michael J. Fox
I know. That's so funny.
One little last passage from the book I wanted to read, just because it was one of the ones that just made me smile. I talked about my experiences at Bible camp in part 1, I think it was. And Viktor Frankl is, I think, a very religious man, but he doesn't go, there's not a really strong religious theme with the book. So,
Right.
But he does talk quickly about his daughter asking him a question when she was 6. She said, "Why do we speak of the good Lord?" Whereupon he says to her, "Some weeks ago you were suffering from measles, and then the good Lord sent you full recovery." But he said his daughter wasn't content, and she retorted, "Well, but please, Daddy, do not forget, in the first place, he had sent me the measles.
Yeah, that's true.
So he does have I find he just has a way about seeing things from all angles. And I think that just speaks to the nature of the book. So if you haven't read it, we did go over as Jeff hasn't. I mean, we parts 1, 2, and 3, we do go over the highlights, but there really is so much more to be taken from Man's Search for Meaning. And I hope that you enjoyed our discussion and our many tangents around it. And it went deep. A lot of philosophy in this one.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.
And remember, you can catch up on past episodes at infoquench.com.
Or just about anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And help spread the word about InfoQuench.
Till next time.